firstborn son, Brandon. He was quite a handsome fellow. This is him when he was playing football at Westmore High. And this is me again when I had hair. I was living in that trailer house and going to law school. And Brandon was quite little then. And, it was hard. You guys know, you're there. The little boy grew up. He ended up being quite an athlete. He was the homecoming king there at Westmore High School. Later, he played on a national championship Division II football team. There he is with two of his siblings. The little girl there, I believe in education. She's a doctor today. But sadly, Brandon ran into a buzzsaw. He was going to practice law with me. That was his goal. He was just about to head to law school. When we found out he had developed an addiction to, of all things, opioids. And he didn't have a prescription for opioids. He was taking them because they were passing them out in the weight room. I found this out later. So I like those arrows because that summed up about 3 years of our life. I knew nothing about addiction, nothing. Anybody watch Andy Griffith, the reruns, Otis the Town Drunk? That is what I thought an addict was. I'm ashamed to say that. I just thought they were bad people doing bad things. They didn't have any willpower. Today I know more than that. My son got introduced to these pills. They change the chemistry of your brain. This isn't an opinion. This is a fact. They take over something called the nucleus accumbens, which is deep-seated in your brain. And they actually rob you of your free will. And I'm here to tell you, take the finest human being on the planet. Take Mother Teresa. You give her opioids long enough and in the right quantity, she too will become an addict and do terrible things. It's just a fact. And that's what happened to my boy. So in 2002, he lost his life to this. Law school was never an option for him. And this is the first time that I'd ever had to write an obituary. I'd written all kinds of briefs and articles and you name it, reports. I was a prolific writer. But this was the first time I'd ever had to write an obituary. So I'm telling you, there's worse things in life than losing a case. And I found that out kind of late in life. That was 2002, so that was 20 years ago. And it changed my life greatly. Now fast forward, that little boy that I showed you in the pool picture was Dylan, my other son. Coincidentally, they were 15 years apart in age, but Dylan had a disease of the brain, just like Brandon did. A disease of the brain. It's the most incredible organ in our body, the most complex organ in our body. Coincidentally, they now estimate that there are the same number of neurons in the human brain as stars in the Milky Way galaxy. I read that not too long ago. It's a complex machine. But these two boys had two different diseases in the same organ, but two different diseases. Brandon had addiction, and Dylan was born with epilepsy. And didn't know that because he couldn't talk. They thought he had night terrors. But as Dylan grew up, there he is in the pool with his little sister Hannah and his big brother Brandon. But one day he had 300 seizures in one day. They couldn't get medicine to control it. And everybody told us that Dylan would never drive, never graduate high school. He'd never be able to do all the things a little boy is supposed to do. Well, we took that challenge on, and he had 2 different brain surgeries. He had an electrical device called a vagus nerve stimulator implanted. And you know what? We went on, and he and I were particularly close because I was determined for him to lead a normal life and overcome all those adversities that he had. He and Brandon were so different. Brandon was born, had all this athletic talent. Nobody ever told Brandon he couldn't do anything. It wasn't until he ran into that addiction that he found something he couldn't be. But poor Dylan was the opposite. Everybody told him he couldn't do anything because of this epilepsy. But you know what? Finally, he got well enough controlled, he got his driver's license. He learned to surf. He became an avid motorcyclist along with me. We rode all over the country on these motorcycles. And finally, over all the odds, he graduated from college. He got a job. He was a LiDAR technician. LiDAR is kind of like radar, but with light instead of, a laser beam. But anyway, here he is. This is 3 months before Dylan died. He and I were at a Cure Epilepsy event, which is Cure is the greatest nonprofit trying to find a cure for epilepsy. And we went to this event in Chicago, and Dylan was so moved by it, he asked me, he said, "Dad, can we do this the rest of our lives? I'd like to be a part of the advocacy for this organization." And I said, "You bet." I was moved that he wanted to give back and do something outside of his job, because he had plenty to do in his job. This was outside of the job. 3 months later, his life was lost to something we didn't even know about. We didn't know what SUDEP was, sudden unexpected death from epilepsy. It was like a breaker in your house flipping. He just turned off. And they don't know why or how to stop it. Fast forward, his little sister, the little girl in the pool there, who just graduated from this fine institution this year, she's carrying on the mantle for Dylan and keeping his promise. She's going to be an advocate for Cure Epilepsy. And we're hopefully going to find a cure for epilepsy based upon the research. I don't understand it all, but we try to read it all. But I think we'll find a cure for epilepsy. It wasn't quick enough for Dylan and for many others, but I think we'll find one. And we're working on a cure for addiction too. I don't think it'll happen in my life, but I'm absolutely convinced it will happen. So what's my point of all this?